Welcome to Smashing Heads Podcast. My name is Zach, and as always, I'm joined by my best friend Jake.
How's everybody doing tonight?
My wife, Hannah, is actually not here. She's actually not really on this interview very much either. She had a doctor's appointment the day that we were recording out of town, and she actually came in right as we were already in the session with Paulie. So she jumps in a little bit at the beginning, and then at the very end, she was kind of in and out. But normally we are a three-person podcast.
Well, and we believe here at the Smashing Heads headquarters that your health always comes first. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've had one motto since day one, and that's been it.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for checking this out. If you're new here, we are strictly a challenge-related podcast. We've been looking into doing some other things and whatnot, but we come on here. We've been friends for a very long time. Zach and I, we've been friends for 15 plus years. And
more than that, man.
And of course, Hannah, you are married to, so there's more of a connection there than there is with me, I would think.
A different type of connection.
Right. So we just like to have a good time on here. You know, we come in, we have a good time, we have fun, and, we have a Patreon now also, right, Zach?
Yeah, so we have a Patreon. Our normal show is we watch the challenge the night that they premiere, and then we do a recap episode of what happened that night, and they go up and during this season, Wednesday night. During, other seasons, if it's Tuesday, they go up Tuesday night and so on. But we've recently launched a Patreon. Were you going to say something just then?
No, that's how I was just going to say. That's how committed we are. We watch the show and we jump on immediately.
It sounded like you were about to jump in. Jake's recording from his house. I'm recording from my house. This is not usual for us. We usually can kind of look at each other.
It's weird.
Yeah, and so
it's weird not being able to look at you when I'm doing this.
Oh, that's great. Our Patreon is we decided we wanted to do a few more things. Not only make more content, but also have a better way to interact with our listeners, get insight on things. And so our Patreon is patreon.com/smashingheadspodcast. There's 3 different tiers right now. We have a fresh meat tier, a free agents tier, and a bloodlines tier. They kind of scale proportionally. But we do exclusive podcasts on Patreon. We started doing video stuff a little bit on Patreon and things like that. Just go check it out. If it's for you, we'd love to have the support. We'd love you to be along with us. They also get our interviews 24 hours in advance, and also a few other things. Also will completely be ad-free because we're going to be launching into ads and stuff like that. So, again, if you're new here, Patreon is a great way to support the show, but just listening, downloading, giving reviews, and so on, that really helps. And if you need to check out all of our social media, anything like that, we have a website, just smashingheadspodcast.com. It has links to all the social media, Spotify, iTunes, all that. But if you're listening to this, you've already found it somehow. So, again, if you're new, we have not had the same opinion on Paulie. I think that's the easiest way to say that.
It's been a 2-on-1 sort of venture here. You and Hannah have had your stance on Paulie, and I have had mine. And so
I was a little hesitant to do this one at first, but the more we emailed back and forth with him, the more comfortable I got, and I'm glad we did it. And I think a lot of people will be surprised. I don't think I've listened back to the interview so far. I don't think he is coming across in a way that I think people expect. I think he's very down to earth. We had a good time, and I don't feel like he was just like trying to fill us full of something. I don't know what.
It was interesting because, we had heard kind of how things had went on other podcasts, and it was good. Like he came across in a way that, like you said, I don't think people are necessarily prepared for. But having said that, I think there's definitely a part 2 in the works because there was a lot of stuff we didn't have time to get to that we want to talk with him about and ask him about. And I think he has I know he has, go check out our Twitter, has expressed interest in coming back for a part 2 at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely something we'd all be down to do. And next time, hopefully Hannah will be able to jump in. So
for now, thank you guys for joining us. We're going to throw it over to Paulie. So have a good night, everyone.
Here it is, guys. This is an interview that if I'm being truthful, I did not expect to happen. But we are joined by Paulie Calafiore, if I said that correctly, because I did ask him before we started recording. Is that right?
You nailed it.
All right. See, it's an Italian name.
It's Irish.
It's Irish?
No, it's very Sicilian.
I was like, good Lord, that's the weirdest Irish name I've ever heard.
This is a big night, right? Because
Well, for Jake especially.
for all of us, this is a big night for all of us. Because let's be honest, Paulie, you've been really at the center of everything. Whether you're in the Redemption House or you're knocking out dailies, ever since you've been on the challenge, this is a big moment.
I actually thought that I was on way more challenges than I've been. I never.
It does feel like you've been on more than two at this point, for sure.
I'm basically here for Jake.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's what I like to hear.
Of course.
This is the best day of his life.
I mean, I don't know if you. I think that was one of the questions, right? Was people wanted to know if you intentionally joined the IG Live last night, or if it was a total accident.
I think it was an accident.
Because when you joined, I shouted really loud because, look, Paulie, I can't deny it. I have to own up to it. I'm a fan.
We were in the middle, like we do IG Live at the top of our podcast and like leave it on, and we were recording. And he was like mid thought, and then just lost it. He went off the rails, and then you weren't even there. Just gone.
I popped in for a second just to kind of see what everyone looked like, but I didn't want to coming into this, I didn't want to have any preconceived notions. I didn't want to understand anybody's tone, body language, how you guys speak, how you guys run the flow of it. I just wanted to dive in head first, because that's how I do, I guess, most things in my life, because I feel like it's more fun that way to just navigate uncharted waters in that sense. So if that makes sense, that's why I kind of popped in and out. I was like, all right, this is what they look like. I recognize Jake because I'm like, all right, Jake's picture on Twitter, that's him.
Yeah. And like the room we record in, it's a very tight window for like an iPad to do an IG Live, and so like we're kind of half in and half out sometimes. So just off the bat, how long have you been a fan of our show? I'm just kidding.
Well, I'll be completely honest. I haven't listened to any like challenge podcasts. Challenge Mania was the first one that I had listened to, and I only listened to it to listen to Wes speak on it, because I knew that he was going to be making a comeback. And I didn't know if it was going to be season 33. So I wanted to see how he was going to kind of put his feelers out there towards the people that he wanted to work with. And lo and behold, in classic West fashion, he put it out there when he was given the question of like, hey, what newcomers do you think are cool and you'd want to work with? And he starts talking about Natalie, and he starts talking about me. And then it's like, oh, and your beef with Carr. And then he puts out the olive branch for Carr. And I'm like, oh, look at him go. Classic West.
Well, so yeah, just so everyone listening knows, when you emailed us to start this whole thing, you CC'd Wes on everything.
I did. I had to.
Well, I was like, is this real? Like, what's happening right now? I was like, why is Wes included in this? But then it just became a thing, and I made him like I replied all to everything, so he had to read all of it until like the very end.
That's good. I'm glad that he had to waste time in his day just to see what kind of replies we were doing back and forth to each other. I would have made it more interesting.
Well, I will say, like, you came in pretty hot in the emails. I mean, it's exactly what I expected, but
yeah. So I had to grab everyone's attention, and I knew that Jake would get hyped up by it, and I knew that you, Zach, and your wife would kind of be like, "Oh, here we go." You have to kind of know the audience that you're going with. It's kind of like when I tweet things. I know the exact reactions I'm going to get from everybody, but I do it anyway just because it's fun.
I will say, to your credit, you do seem very self-aware of the brand you've built around yourself.
I think I just kind of had to own up to what it was. You know what I mean? Like you the one thing that my father told me is like, you're never going to change the minds of people who have it set in stone that you're always going to be something. You know, he said, unless somebody meets you in person, or talks to you like on a podcast or whatever, he's like, you're never going to change anybody's mind, because if they hear something about you or they see something about you that's positive, they're going to be like, there's no way it's true. So I just decided to run with it, and I was like, you know what? There may be a percentage of people that appreciates it, and then there's going to be the percentage of people that are like, yep, this is him. And you just gotta, you can't try too hard, because when you try and explain yourself, you leave yourself open to getting holes poked all over you. And I don't mean that in a literal sense.
I've been saying that exact thing for like the past year. 2018 was a really weird year for me, and I think I discovered and figured out that like once people make their minds up about you, there's really nothing you can do about it. You know, they've kind of set up in their mind who you are, what you're capable of, and no matter what kind of growth you go through, they have this perceived notion of who you are, and there's nothing you can do to change that. And so I actually contemplated moving out of the state of Tennessee, and so like I totally get, right? Like sometimes you just make one too many mistakes for people, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Hey, there's one thing that I never in my life have ever claimed to be, and that's perfect. I've never claimed to never making mistakes. I've never claimed to never failing. Those are all parts of my journey. Those are parts of my journey that I've chose. I am definitely not PG rated,
but you're trying for this one.
I'm doing my best,
Yeah, you're doing great so far.
I completely understand where like a lot of people from the Northeast, they can understand my mindset, my mentality. I've learned from, just by receiving feedback from first going on Big Brother and then studying the analytics of who tunes in to Big Brother and like what demographic from where, that, there's a lot of parts of the country where like, if you curse once, that's it. You're done. And if you talk about your intimate moments, you are done, and that's it. And like you will never be viewed as good at all. And I've accepted that. I tell people to judge me not by how I am on the field. Judge me, by listening to me from people who actually know me. And when you look at it from that standpoint, it's hard to like. I know it's hard because there's a very small group of people who shout really loud. But if you look at most of my castmates, not all of them sit there and try and trash me. Most of them are like, "Look, I've never seen this side of Paulie, so I don't know what these people are talking about."
I mean, that's a really good point. Like we've been saying that for a while because we started this podcast with Final Reckoning. And so, like, our first episode was like 2 days before Final Reckoning like went up, and so, like, our podcast has grown with you almost. It is like what you said. It's always the loudest ones are not necessarily like the popular opinion, and that we've really become a part of just by necessity, like challenge Twitter and Reddit and things like that. It's a wild place because we all followed some of our favorite cast members, I think, but we didn't follow like every cast member and then fan accounts, stan accounts, things like that.
Right.
We can get into that. Like it's wild what you guys deal with. Like I mute so many people just from our account just because I don't want to see people being crappy to just other humans.
Yeah. It's crazy because it's almost become a bully mentality or like a mob mentality, and people on Stan Twitter, the groups, like they attempt to weaponize themselves in a sense, or at least strike intimidation to whoever's trying to do something. So, for instance, you guys have a podcast. Stan Twitter may not agree with some of the guests that you're putting on there, or you guys decide to talk to, so they will threaten you with less listens, which, less listens means, less advertisers want to come in, because it's like, oh, why are we going to spend money to be on your podcast when the listeners aren't like this? So it's kind of like a weaponization of sorts. And the crazy thing is, from what I've found, just from looking at my DMs and talking to Cara about her DMs and all that stuff, is the majority of people are like a silent majority of like positivity, right? But they're all normal. They're all normal people with normal profiles, with their pictures that depict their life. So they're never gonna get involved in the crazy madness that is Stan Twitter drama, because these people are crazy. They're relentless, and if they know anything about you, I mean, I came off of Big Brother, and at that point, I was working for myself, but all my past employers are like, man, I don't know who you angered, because we're getting emails from like all these anonymous accounts saying that like they should be ashamed that they ever hired you. That we ever hired you. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting, but I guess you guys weren't complaining when I was making you a lot of money, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's the weird side of like I get like people are passionate and they like people, they don't like people, whatever. Just I can never imagine being like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to someone's job and try to get them in trouble. Like, it's just, that blows my mind.
Well, it's crazy how like personal everything is taken. Whether you're a Stan for Cara or Kayla or Paulie or whoever, like everything
I have Stan accounts?
that is.
Oh, probably. I probably have them muted, just to be honest.
But if not, we'll make sure to get one up tonight, and I'll be running that account.
Yes.
Right?
Jake's account is already one. It's
It
just
is not.
he uses his real
It
face.
is not. No, but it's crazy, like, because if something gets said about a certain individual, the whole, Stan crew, like, comes out in droves, man, and just goes into attack mode. And, like, I feel like we definitely fall into that corner of the challenge Twitter sphere of, man, we just have fun watching the show.
Yeah.
Like, we really don't care. I like to classify it as, without, like, demeaning anybody, we're adults.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
you're
just
just logical humans.
That too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange like phenomenon again, because we never were like fully into that side of things until we started this, and it really like weekly like it blows my mind some of the things I see, and like again, you're aware from the emails you sent. Like, I've been critical of you for sure in the past, but it's all been like things that like I've perceived from what we see,
Yeah.
And
I would love to hear
like,
these things.
I've never gone out of my we'll get to it.
Okay.
I've never gone out of my way to like be like, I can't believe at Paul, like, that's where it's like weird to me.
Right.
You've never done that?
No.
You've never added Paulie?
You've never added me? I feel like people do it for fun nowadays because they never know what kind of reaction they're going to get.
Yeah.
And
Well,
trust
with
me,
you never know.
you do never know. Trust me, I've been working on it for years. It's a slow process. My therapist says I'm almost there. Cara and I, we laugh about it all the time because we watch shows, and we follow people and we read articles about things, and we'll sit there and be like, wow, this is ridiculous, but we won't go out of our way to then comment on how ridiculous something is. And we're like, I feel like that's the difference between us and Stan Twitter. And when you actually look at it, like let's just say for humor purposes, someone that gets the most engagement on a tweet or an Instagram post from the challenge cast members, right? If you actually look at it, and if you look at the challenge account and you take the percentage of the people reacting and engaging compared to like what kind of numbers this season is bringing in terms of viewership, it really is a small percentage. So when people sit there and they're like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? It's like, well, even, I'm a Giants fan, but Tom Brady, I have to admit, he is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and the Patriots are one of the greatest teams of all time, and Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches of all time. And even though that kills me to my core to have to say, I have to admit that, what is greatness. But you can go to a Tom Brady post and there will still be people hating on Tom Brady. And he's one of the nicest guys in the world. He literally does nothing except post about his family and football. Like, that's it. And if you can hate on someone like Tom Brady, then it just lets you know that you can't take it personal when people try and hate on you, because it's a very small percentage.
So just for your reference, I don't like Tom Brady at all, but I don't go out of my way. Like what you're saying, like I don't see a post from him or about him and be like, this guy sucks. I can't wait till he's at it. Like, that's stupid. Because again, I can be objective. Like, he's great. He's probably the best quarterback we've ever seen.
Yeah. I love, it's like, in what other generation, right, can people say that they've like witnessed greatness, you know what I mean, on the level of what Tom Brady and the Patriots have seen? So even if I am a Jets fan who hates the Patriots, I have to sit there and be like, I'm witnessing greatness right in front of my eyes, because for a decade, this team has made it to the Super Bowl 8 times, won 6 of those times, and made it to the playoffs every single season for 10 years straight. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, it's a crazy thing to think about, and that may never happen again in history.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's a dynasty, and like, we're Grizzlies fans, and so we're in the same division as the Spurs every year, and it's the same type of thing. Like, Greg Popovich is going to get in the playoffs, and he's going to have amazing players out of nowhere, and it is what it is. But again, we don't go out of our way, and it's interesting because the challenge isn't like we joke like it's the 5th professional sport. It's not a professional sport. There's definitely athletic things that go into all this, but it's its own thing, because it's like no sport is like, oh, the rules are different every day and you don't know what you're doing, and
right.
Like, it's completely different.
Yeah, there's really, I mean, you can prepare all you want, but when it comes down to it, it's the ability to analyze something right in the moment, figure it out, and then perform it with zero pressure. And there's things that can prepare you your whole life to handle it maybe better than how other people might handle it. But you can't, like, as much as I train to be like, all right, I'm agile, I'm fast, I'm strong, I'm not the biggest by any means, right? But my elimination this past season, there's no way you can train for being spun around in a circle. So it's like the only thing you can do is practice techniques of how to engage your focus, how to simplify your communication in those kind of moments. I do a ton of puzzles in the off season, not because I like them, but because I just do them. I reteach myself algebra and calculus and all this stuff in the off season, because I'm like, you know what, the smarter I can make myself and the better at problem solving and critical thinking under pressure I can do, it's keeping my brain healthy. It can't just be my body, because Lord knows I already have an advantage when it comes to my brain, just because I haven't polluted it with drugs and alcohol as much as some of my other castmates. That's just how it is. So that's how I look at it. Every advantage could be an advantage.
That's something I haven't really thought about. Like, we haven't really seen you like drink or like smoke or anything like that, and so like we haven't got, oh, this is drunk Paul. Like, again, you do get worked up, but it's not because of something that you took that night. Yeah,
no, I'm very like I know what my demons are, you know what I mean? So I know what to stay away from. And, alcohol is one of those things where I learned, because I never was a drinker. I never drank. I didn't drink in high school, never drank in college. If anything, it would be like one drink and that's it. And anytime that I would have more than one drink and it would go into a place where I wouldn't want it to go, and I finally had to like look at myself and be like, hey man, you're gonna get arrested one of these days, so you need to stop. And that was something that I dealt with and was like, all right, cool. But once again, there were triggers that caused me to start drinking and partying more, where it's like my soccer career got cut short, and that was the only thing that I ever trained for my entire life. Like, yeah, I got good grades in school, but when you have something that you are being bred for your entire life and you put everything into it and you eat, sleep, breathe it, and then it gets taken away from you and you're like, what do I do now? You know, you turn into the dark side, and thank God I was able to pull myself out of it, and I had a group of people that was able to pull me out of it, and I was mature enough to look at myself in the mirror and be like, hey, stop, otherwise you may end up dead or you may end up in jail. And that's why even when I go on the show and people are like, come on, drink, I'm like, no, you'll never see me drink on these shows because it's already mentally stressful. If all of a sudden I get too drunk, A, I'm not observant to what's going on and I'll miss things that are happening in the game. And B, all it takes is for one wrong thing to happen and then, you know, I'm missing out on potential money because I'm getting sent home.
Yeah.
Or banned
Well, I
for
think
life.
like
You know?
Yeah. And I think like you see that discipline play out in the way you play the game in and outside of the house, and people can sit here and listen and say that I'm playing this up, I'm being the character, I'm sucking up to Paulie, but the fact of the matter is, man, like, and everybody hated on Final Reckoning, right? Like everybody hated on you. You're in the Redemption House the entire time, and I don't know. Do you watch wrestling? Are you a wrestling fan?
I don't watch it as much now as I did as a kid, but you know, I understand the concept of wrestling. I think I had to for one of my screenwriting classes in college, I had to watch WWE wrestling just to learn how they do their script and like the whole babyface versus the heels and the transitions and how they do it and how they wait for WrestleMania to make big transitions happen. It's really, I mean, the organization is crazy.
So Booker T, all right, Hall of Famer,
Love Booker T.
Yeah, he said back in his WCW days with Harlem Heat, he said, "Don't hate the player, hate the game," and that's always been my argument. Like everybody kept being upset, and Zach over here, we had a lot of debates about this, how like it was stupid that you were still in this game, and I'm like, but those are the rules, man. And like the fact of the matter is like you hung around as long as you could, and you make it to a final, and I mean, from what we see in that final, Natalie doesn't make a wrong turn. I mean, you guys win, right?
It's crazy because I love that you say don't hate the player, hate the game, right? So I'm at the mercy of what the game is, what the format is, and then what the edit is on top of it. So I can't control what people see, right? The only thing I can say is this. Prior to going to the Redemption House, Natalie and I, in the two challenges that we competed in, we finished third place, we finished fourth place. I knew that everybody was looking at me being like, who is this kid? Because we're watching him run for an hour and a half outside without getting tired. And, you know, he's climbing the house like it's nothing, you know, and, you know, so you got to take a chance at that. Now, regardless of what you saw in that first elimination, you know, I don't need to talk about the equalizers.
Yeah,
right?
That was such a dumb thing that they wouldn't address, but yeah.
And they wouldn't address it. And once again, I'm at the mercy of an edit, right? So the edit is going to show me being very weak and not being able to move. Meanwhile, Cam's walking to the cage with puzzle pieces, right? So everybody's going to sit there and be like, like look at you. The only thing I'll say about the Redemption House is, as a viewer, right, it's such a stupid twist, right?
Yes.
Now when I'm there, I can't think about that because the only thing I'm thinking about while I'm there is you need to mentally stay checked in. You need to keep your partner mentally checked in. You need to figure out how to get your partner on the same level as you in terms of competing under pressure, because that was Natalie's biggest problem. It's not that she's not a good competitor. It's just that competing under pressure and competing when people are against her, she crumbled and she cracked. And that's what would happen. We'd be rolling up to the eliminations and she'd be like, I'm ready. The second that we would get to Armageddon, all of a sudden I would see the look in her eyes and she would start being like, I can't do this. They're all going to be cheering against this. And I'd be like, Natalie, you got to calm yourself down, right? Like, you have to think of it this way. Like, you're used to being a cheerleader where, like, whether the team sucks or not, everybody is is cheering for the cheerleaders because you guys, it's not your fault that the team's doing bad. Like, you guys are good. You know, I was like, I come from athletic background where when I'm going to away games, they're shouting things about my mother and my sister because they did the research on me trying to get in my head while I'm playing the game. And I watched teams come into the Redemption House, and as soon as they got to the Redemption House, their whole body language and posture would change, and they'd be defeated, and they'd be like, that's it. Our game is over. This is it. Where I told Natalie the whole time in the Redemption House, I was like, we stay mentally locked in. We have a big brother social game. We need to work that social game because that's all this Redemption House is. It's a big brother social game of convincing people that they should take us to the end, or take us as long as we need to until you learn how to win with me. And then once you learn how to win with me, we will dominate as soon as we get in because everybody's intimidated by us. We're a very well-balanced team, and everybody knows that you could run for days, I could run for days, and that's a dangerous thing as the game goes on. And if we stay mentally locked in, we will win. Right? And they didn't even do us justice in the final, because there was a puzzle there that I solved 20 minutes before the next team even solved. You know what I mean? And that's, losing the final by a minute and a half where, like, yeah, if she doesn't get lost, cool. But if Cara's partner holds up her end of the bargain and throws a 10-minute penalty on Joss and Sylvia, they're now behind us, and we get to throw our penalty at Hunter and Ashley in the final challenge. And who knows? Maybe we pull it off. You never know.
Yeah, that season, like, I have criticisms of you and the way that it was played, but I am very on record that season in particular, it almost was like producers or whoever was behind it. Which, by the way, thank God for Justin Booth being back. Just FYI. But it's like they tried to do too many twists, and they're like, "Oh, gotcha! Here's a new one, and here's a new one," and it honestly kind of like diluted the whole season. And Jake is right as far as it was the rules. You hung around, but I think you could probably also agree that it's pretty insane how long you spend in that Redemption House, and then you lost eliminations, and then kept staying, and then lost an elimination, and then kept staying. Like, yeah. I get it was 100% within the confines of the game.
Yeah. I mean, it was frustrating. I mean, we're talking about 9 weeks of filming, and I'm in a Redemption House for 4.5, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then the hardest part is it's like going into the Redemption House on the elimination that we did, where I'm sitting there being like, did you guys really just rig my bands like this? And this is going to be how my rookie season ends because you guys rigged an elimination for me to go home. I didn't even know there was a Redemption House. It was weird. And then
it was weird because we interviewed Devin, and he was saying, it's crazy that they're doing this because obviously if I'm going against someone like CT, he's like, I need the help. CT needs to be like held back because we're not the same. Like, it's not even close. And it was a weird thing, and I don't know why they did it, and then they would never talk about it because they did it in every elimination.
I feel as though, well, actually, they, from what everybody says, that elimination was the only one with equalizers, and it was a running joke because once I made it back in the house, every time there was an elimination, I would go to the producers and I'd be like, "So what's the equalizer?" There was for sure some in other ones. The one that Devin and Corey entered. That's the only other one that I had heard.
I knew for sure that one. Yeah,
that's the only other one that I had heard about it. But for instance, when Natalie and I had to go against Kyle and Brad, there was nothing slowing down Kyle spinning 90-pound Natalie, and there was nothing assisting me spinning 220-pound Brad. So that's my whole thing with that. I feel like with Final Reckoning, they tried to go more, let's try and make this an entertaining show, and they got away from the roots of, hey, the challenges have to be badass and the competitions have to be fair.
It was 3 weeks until we got an elimination.
Yeah, and it was frustrating. It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was frustrating for me because once again, you look at the second elimination that Natalie and I lost. It's like I yanked my hammer out in less than 3 seconds, and I got to sit there and watch Natalie not be able to pull a hammer out. you know, and
Yeah.
I gotta sit there, and then when everybody sits there laughing at me, being like, "Oh, you suck, you suck, you suck," I'm sitting there being like, "I suck. Are you kidding me? Are you watching how I perform on certain things?" You know what I mean? And then in the puzzle, you know, the second one, it's like I solved both those puzzles, but it's not going to show that. You know, it's going to show whatever they want it to show, but they had to make a build up to what happens, and that's what it is. We're at the mercy of what's going to get the best reaction out of the people watching, unfortunately.
I will say, speaking of Natalie, you know, throughout all the years of the challenge, there's these iconic moments, right? There's the bananas backpack. There's CT shouting, "I'll smash your head and eat it," which
That's where our name comes from.
That's where our name comes from. You know, bananas taking the money from Sarah. Like, there's all these iconic moments. And, man, I think you could put, if we're going back to the ball pit elimination, we're watching that, right? And, like, Natalie is just getting the crap beat out of her. Like, it's hard to watch. And for her to, like, pull through and do that is one of the more underrated, incredible feats in an elimination, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very surprising because, like, Natalie seems to be good at dailies, but not really good at eliminations. And to pull that one out, like, because Kyle was destroying her. Like, she was getting thrown around. You saw her chin afterward and all that. And that was definitely impressive. I think we do like little awards at the end of every show, and I'm pretty sure I gave her my, like, she smashed everyone's head that night.
Well, and you guys were up against arguably the team that everybody viewed as like one of the two strongest teams there that season. And then you guys, I mean, you've been in the Redemption House. You're, you know, as far as we can tell, viewed as the weak team there. And then you come through and, like, pull that out, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is an underrated, iconic moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I told Natalie, like, everything comes with strategy. And I said, Natalie, he's going to gas out every 15 seconds, and he's going to need to rest for 15 seconds. I said, when he gasses out, I said, just close your eyes, count to 15. When he gasses out, you find as many balls as possible. And lo and behold, every 15 seconds he gassed out, spinning her, and she found the balls. You know what I mean? And I knew my job was to keep Brad moving as best as I could. And I said, if I could keep Brad moving long enough, Natalie will figure it out, because all she's got to do is get, I think it was 5 or 6, might have been 5 or 6
Something
numbers.
like that, yeah.
So I was like, if I could keep him moving for 5 or 6 minutes, then we'll win. And she pulled it out.
I think you know what you're talking about with Natalie, how, like, she gets into eliminations and you can kind of see her start to turn. It's not a slight at her at all. I think she's too nice. Like, she seems like she's just too nice for this, and, like, that makes her a better person in real life than, like, a TV person.
Yeah.
She seems like one that's, like, takes everything, like, kind of personally, but she genuinely is just trying to be nice to everyone, and that's not always the best type of personality to have on a show like this.
No, definitely not. I mean, I told her to bring out the savage, you know, in there, and I feel like a lot of people never understand, and that's why I feel like they're, like, out of all the reasons that you could say why someone would hate me or give me critique and backlash, I see a lot of it. People say, you need to be more humble. You need to, I would like you if you didn't talk as much in this. And what people fail to realize is when you're inside there, it's a war zone where people seek to sniff out weakness, and they seek to leverage vulnerability. So I go with the mentality of, I would rather be the one eating than being eaten. And even if that has to carry out onto social media to wind people up and do whatever, so be it. You know, that's my strategy. And the crazy thing is, it's like, no matter how many times I say it, everybody always bites into it, no matter what.
So let's get into that a little bit. So I think the problem that a lot of people had, and, you know, I'm definitely fall into that category, was right away was,
here we go,
was you came in, like, again, we're not going to fight about things. Like, we already talked about this. We're good. Me and you are good. Like, you came in right away. You hadn't done much at that point. I think if you would have started with like how you have done in War of the Worlds, it would have been a completely different story. But you come in and you're talking like you're gonna be this dominating force, and like you're cussing everyone out, and you're like getting heated, and you're coming after the vets and all that. And then what happens, and you're in the redemption house for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I get some of that was out of your specific control, like going back to what you were talking about with the hammer and all that stuff. But you got to understand how it looks from a viewer's perspective. Like, you're this new guy coming in saying, I'm the new thing. Like, I'm going to take people out. Also lying about some things that happened in the redemption house.
Yeah.
About some favorites who have returned. And,
right.
I mean, you got to know how it looks.
Yeah. And to be honest, everything comes back to self-belief and self-confidence, and going into everything, right? Here's what you have to understand is if you can live in the minds of your enemies, then you've already won the war. And that's how I look at everything. I don't need to get into all the books that I've read specifically on certain types of strategies because I don't want to give it away to my competitors so that they can now start reading it and they can understand why I do the things I do. When I'm finally finished and retired, hopefully I will have a good resume and I'll be able to be like, look, this is how it did. But there's a method to every single piece of madness. And everything I did worked. Because everybody that came to the redemption house, all they could talk about is how every single guy in the house would talk about me non-stop. Non-stop. I lived in their brains. I lived in their conversations. The thought of me coming back into the house had them up in arms of being like, if he makes it back in the house, we got to get him out right away. So people aren't even thinking about the game and long-term and winning. They're thinking about me. And I'm sitting in the redemption house. You know what I mean?
I mean, I do.
And then when I finally make it back in the house, then it turns into that self-fulfilling prophecy of, wait a second, I wonder if everything he was saying is actually true, which then proved to be true on that season. And that's my main thing. And then I carried on that smack talk for an entire summer leading into War of the Worlds, so that once I got there,
you did.
I said to myself, if I talk all this smack leading up to War of the Worlds, all I have to do is come in out of the gate and just blow people away. And in that first challenge, that was all individual, they didn't even do it justice. I finished that impending doom challenge 20 minutes before the next person did. So I sat there and paced back and forth and stared down every single guy there and nodded my head being like, yeah, I came to play. And that lived in their heads as I went into the next competition and won. The next competition and won. And once I won 4 in a row, everybody's mentality was already broken to the point where they're like, I mean, other than Turbo, because Turbo's an animal, right?
Yeah.
Of
He's
being
built out
like
of milk.
Yeah, of being like, is everything this guy says truth? And it becomes, now they start to believe it. And once again, if you live in your enemy's head, you've already won,
Yeah, I mean, I get that strategy. I get the television side of it. Again, I think if you would have started with War of the Worlds, you might have had a different, like, quote, like, character arc. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because clearly you're doing very well this season. I mean, you're still around. And the problem... I think, just for your sake, I know you say you're very calculated on the things you say on social media and all that. You and Kara especially like to say, oh, everyone hates us because we're winning. I don't think that's what it is. Like, I think people like to see, like, again, I like watching good competition. I think other people, now there are definitely people who are that way. But I think you just rub a lot of people the wrong way.
God, Zach.
Well, why is that, Zach?
To your credit, you've been very cordial with us.
Give me an insider's perspective. Let me into the minds of the people who
Here
are
we go.
doing the
Now it's
criticizing.
getting hot. Yeah.
So again, and just so our listeners know, I asked you up front if there's anything off limits, and you're like, I'm an open book. I've owned up to everything. I'm not going to get into personal things with you because our show's not about that. Our show is about the challenge, and so
Right.
But just so everyone knows, like you were completely cool with us bringing up whatever, and I think that's a very important thing to bring up. But like you come into this show and you're already acting like you're CT and you got like a 10-year resume, and I get what you're saying. Like you're trying to live in people's heads. I think that's part of it, and also you've in a lot of people's minds. This isn't my quote, but
Zach,
you've kind of corrupted the female face of the show. I don't think that's truly what's happened, but she's not the same person she was obviously when she started. It was 10 years ago.
Right.
And so I think it's just like a perfect storm of that, her kind of changing and owning some things, and you coming in and you're like, your guns blazing like right away. And it's just like, oh, you're giving people a lot of reasons to be able to hate on you. And I think you're aware of that. Like, I think you're, of anyone on the show, you're probably one of the more self-aware ones.
Yeah. No, I'm self-aware when it comes to, I know why, right? And the thing is, when it comes to the shows, only we on the shows know our truth and know the truth, right? And now, the only thing I'll say to the people who say that I talk as if I have a resume, I'm very aware that I have zero things to like. I'm not going to sit here and say I am the greatest challenger of all time. I am sitting here saying that by the time I'm done, I will be considered one of the greatest challengers, if not the greatest. And I plan on
That's what rubs people the wrong way.
Hey, that is fine. But guess what? If that rubs somebody the wrong way, then my thing that I'll say to that person is, have you ever set a goal for yourself and wanted to achieve it, and then not only spoke it into existence so that people hold you accountable, right? But then took the proper steps along the way in order to achieve that goal, right? So I speak things into existence because I know that people will hold me accountable for it. And I'm not talking about the people who are going to support me, right? Because when you're in this kind of lifestyle, the same as athletics, you almost have to have this higher belief of yourself so that you can achieve more than someone who thinks very low of themselves. And I don't want to just win one title. I want to try and win as many titles as possible. I want to hold all the records, even if that means my elimination record has to go up because I have to go into more elimination records. My daily challenge win record has to go up. My final appearances have to go up. My final wins have to go up. And that's a very hard and lofty goal. And if there aren't people out there criticizing me and holding me accountable, I'll never achieve it. Because what they don't realize is with everything that they say as a critique and how I should play my game, I'm not sitting there dismissing them as if they're wrong. I will take the things and be like, you know what, this person, even though they're kind of coming at me very maliciously, there's some truth to what they're saying on how I could be playing my game that could actually benefit me. And, the one thing that I want to show people every time I enter a challenge house is a new dynamic and style to how I play. So the first season of Final Reckoning, people couldn't really see the competitive side of me. So all they saw was, oh, look at this guy. He likes to play mind games. He literally just made up a lie from the Redemption House just to mess with someone, right? And then...
And that hurt him, by the way.
Yeah, it did. And I've apologized to Brad. And now this season, it's a new dynamic where it's like, look, I want to show people that I can compete. And I am not just going to say I can win these challenges. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to show people. And I'm happy that certain things are left on the editing floor, because that just means I have more cards to deal in future seasons. Whereas some people, they get their whole games exposed on one season, and then you go into the next season and you're like, hey, sorry, man, like I've already seen your hand. My hand, fortunate for me, has been kept very close to me. And a lot of people hate me for a lot of reasons, but realistically, I came into that house and I saw a lot of stuff going on when it came to the men of the show and how they were treating like Cara and how they were letting certain things happen. And I'm the one who stood up for her. I was the only one who stood up for her, which put me in harm's way, which put me in the redemption house. But I never changed my mindset. I never changed my thoughts on these people. Certain people say, oh, I'm like a brother to Cara. I've been friends with her forever. It's like, well, then why is a stranger stepping up and speaking on her behalf when someone is treating her so poorly, right? And now she finally has a voice when it comes to these people, and everybody's like, no, I want Cara to be the victim, let's be honest. We watch all these shows. Cara's come a very long way. She's a beast as a competitor, but she's let a ton of people walk all over her in the process. And a lot of these people know that, and they use that to their advantage when they take advantage of her insecurities, and they take advantage of how, certain aspects of her life. And I go in there and I call these people out on their BS. And now, once again, I can't say I'm perfect, right? But I can sit there.
But no one is.
Yeah, right? I made mistakes when it came to how I handled ending a relationship, starting another relationship, and as much things got lost in translation. Unfortunately for me, once things were serious, all the mistakes of my past got thrown in my face at a point where I was a completely changed person. You know what I mean? And that it sucks to pay for your sins after you've already kind of been like, you know what, I'm going to make a conscious decision to be a different person and be a better person, right? And I've been that person, this whole time, right? But people are going to keep bringing up those mistakes, and I can't do that. But here's one thing that I can say that I've never in my life did, and I don't need to name names, right? I'm not punching walls next to females' heads. I'm not jabbing them in the stomach. I'm not sitting there yelling in their faces, calling them sluts, calling them all these things. You know what I mean? Those things are what I don't like. And I don't want to be part of the cool kids crew when it comes to the challenge house. Like, if you think you're too cool for school and you want to go and you want to try and isolate and you want to try and do this, I don't need an army. I can do it myself. And that's what I've proven this season, is that I don't need allies. I can do things myself. And if nobody wants to work with me, I'm okay with that. But if people want to work with me, awesome. But I'm never going to back down when it comes to a group of people who, if they have the opportunity to gang up and bully someone, they will. And I will never be the person who cries victim, and I will never be the person who backs down when a group of people come at me. And that's just something I've been raised to do from my family. That's situations that I've thrown myself in since I was in middle school. If I saw people getting bullied, I didn't care if the cool kids or the cliques were going to then target their anger on me. I would go and I would stand up for the kids that were getting bullied. And that's just how I've always been. People like to throw in my face my Big Brother season, right? It's like, okay.
Which we didn't watch, just for your sake. Like, we haven't watched Big Brother.
Yeah, no, I get it. But, like, that's a critique, right? And people are like, oh, the way you talk to women that season. I'm like, well, I talk to everybody that way. If someone disrespects me or if I disagree with something, I did it. Just because CBS chose to leave out me getting in the guys' faces, well, guess what? I've now done 3 shows. 2 of those 3 shows since Big Brother, I have only attacked the men and come at the men. So for how long can you push that narrative that I'm aggressive towards women and I'm angry towards women? It's like, no, if you listen to my pre-Big Brother interviews, I said I'm going to target people who are smarter than me. And on my Big Brother season, all the women, for the most part, were smarter than me. So why would I want smarter competitors in a game where smarts and social game rule that game? There's no competitive aspect to it when it comes to, like, men going against men and women going against women. It's men and women in the same house. And if somebody's smart, that's who they are as a competitor. So I felt like the men were easily controlled, which is why I wanted to eliminate the women.
It is pretty wild talking about this season of the challenge, how because you've seen in all these past seasons how it's all about the alliances, right? Like it's all about like the people you can surround yourself with, and you look at Bananas, how he's played, Wes, all these guys, and yet you've come in this season and it's been like the total opposite. I mean, 4 out of the first 5 dailies, you won. You and Ninja won.
I'll take a grievance with that, but we can get into that in a minute.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You're fired up now.
No, it's I don't. There are certain things about this season I don't like. I love this season as a whole, but there's some weird little things that, from a viewer's sake, I don't like.
Nonetheless, you win 4 out of the first 5 dailies. You're in the tribunal. You're kind of controlling this game. You've got your fingerprints all over this game, and yet you still seem to be in your own little corner, and there doesn't seem to be this whole, I've got to get on Paulie's side, I've got to get on Kara's side. There doesn't seem to be a lot of that. Like, I mean, do you kind of still consider yourself like a lone wolf in this game?
I would say for sure I'm a lone wolf. Later on in the season, obviously it showed that Turbo and I had that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watching the season back, it just affirmed, it confirmed everything that I was observing, where I'm like, why does it seem like everybody is kind of always trying to be on my good side, but then I know for a fact that there's people conspiring to get me out. And that's not just like the regular paranoia of the game. It's just you observe, from a Big Brother standpoint, the way that Big Brother works is like you don't need to go and have these conversations. All you have to do is observe where people are walking, how loud the conversation in the room is, and how long they're staying in certain rooms. Right? And that's all you need to observe to know what's going on.
All right, so we pushed this interview back by like 2 days because we wanted to talk about last night's episode, which was the one with the plain daily and all that stuff. All right, so I think this is going to be where people have a criticism of you. And to be clear, like I understand it from a game perspective. Like you're close to the final. Like you don't want to be dumb. However, for 2 seasons, you've been talking about wanting to take Kyle out. You've been saying, well, if someone's gonna do, like, if they're not gonna do it, I'm just gonna have to do it myself. Things like that. And again, you know what you're saying. Like you're trying to live in people's heads. But last night would have been, man, it would have been the time to do it. Yeah, and he was hurt, and I get it's a very conflicting thing because from a game side, it is very hard to do that when you're that close. But from a kind of pride side, you're definitely going to want to do that. But I do also have a theory about you and Kyle, just regardless. But why didn't you actually ultimately step up? Is it just because you were so close?
Actually, no. And once again, I can't dive into
no spoilers.
No, not spoilers. I can't dive into, because I'll get in trouble. I can't talk about like the TV magic that goes behind episodes, right? But what I can talk about is it's very unfortunate how this whole season has been, and I'm just as upset about the forced love triangle that has gone on all season, because realistically, Cara and I stayed in our own room and minded our own business, came up with our own strategies, and Kyle was hooking up with Maddie since the first week, right? So in our minds, we're sitting there being like, there's no love triangle. There's no way there could be a love triangle. You know what I mean? And we knew that Kyle was like, his head wasn't in the game, and that was my fault because I was on him every single day, like from a talking smack standpoint to like, sitting there being like, all right, now I'm going to talk to him and think that we're cool, and then I'm going to turn around and do something up. Now I'm going to talk to him this day and so that he thinks we're cool, and then he's all happy giddy, and then I'm going to turn around and do something up to him. You know what I mean? Sorry for the curses, by the way.
Yeah.
No, you've done great.
I did great up until that point.
I'm making a note.
So that's the 54-minute mark was my first curses.
I know, that's pretty good. Like that's if anyone's betting on this, they lost some money.
However, as the season went on, I started being like, you know what? From a competitive standpoint, I've thrown everything I can at this guy, and he keeps coming back. And then it got to a point where he was physically injured. So I had emotionally and mentally broken him. And now injuries were coming. So he had his wrist, he had his knee, and he had his toes. And the unfortunate thing is we did come to terms with each other on a level of respect from a competitive standpoint and had conversations with each other kind of in the sense of being like, hey, man, do you really want to go against me if I'm not 100%? Like, we've got plenty of seasons to do this where we're both at full strength. And I was like, you know what, man? You're right. Like, what kind of battle would it be if we go in and do this and you're not at 100%? And, he had his level of respect for me being like, bro, you're killing this season. You've got a good chance of winning the whole thing. Do you want to risk like an injury if something goes down? And we're sitting there having a level conversation with each other being like, you know what? There's no honor in beating someone if they're injured. And there's also no honor if someone has no chance of winning a final at that point because of how beat up they are, injures somebody that has a very good chance of winning the final. Because regardless of what anybody will say, at that point in the game, everybody in the house was like, all right, who's going to win between Turbo and Paulie? And how is anybody going to pull off an upset? And that's why I'm a little, I don't want to say upset because it is what it is. Nobody's going to get a good reaction out of seeing that and seeing us break bread. But the reaction and the buildup that they got, whether they want to take what was happening there. I mean, after I had that conversation with Kyle, I went and did an interview for 5 hours leading up to the elimination, no food, no water, and just was like, all right, well, I don't got to worry about this. And then as soon as I show up there, I start getting baited by Wes and TJ. Yeah. And I'm sitting there being like, are they really trying to bait me to go down there after they just kept me in a room for 5 hours and starved me? And after they saw me have this conversation, I was like, I'm not taking the bait. Sorry.
It's interesting. You're saying like no one would want to see you guys break bread. We actually talked about it. The first tribunal that Cara was not involved in, like she wasn't up there with you. You and Kyle had this like playful, like I'm gonna get you, like, and it was like that was one of my favorite parts of the season because it was like you were both aware of what was going on. You both knew you were kind of playing it up, but also, like you said, you did have respect for each other. But like, I would have much rather seen so much more of that than what we have seen, which is where it's like, oh, everything has to be this big dramatic whatever. If you had a whole season of you guys playing like that, like I'm gonna get you when you're not looking, like that would be so much more fun to me.
Yeah, but they're never going to show that. And granted, tempers do flare. I mean, like when Kyle and I went head to head, like trust me, we got fined for it because it was real.
Yeah, I know.
And that was my whole thing is that after that, I basically went to him and I was like, dude, I'm like, this can just be about you and I, because in my mind, it is just about you and I. Like, I will never understand why you keep bringing Cara's name up, because she has nothing to do with this other than the fact that she's aligned with me and, we're going to be targeting the same people. But as far as it goes between you and me, like, this is between you and me. And I even had that conversation with Cara being like, look, stay out of this. This is between Kyle and I. If you win and you would like to target him, cool. There's no reason to make new enemies. And in hindsight, only targeting one person that keeps coming back, it keeps you from making new enemies. And I don't really, like...
That is true.
I have made enough enemies without even doing this. I mean, look, Johnny Bananas hates me for God knows what reason other than the fact that Natalie and I beat him. And, between you and me, because his, stock is falling and my stock is rising. But that's neither here nor there.
This is a podcast, so it's not between me and you.
Between us and the listeners. Nah, that's just me being a wise ass. I've literally had multiple conversations with Johnny being like, look, man, I'll help you get to a final. All you have to do is apologize for being a shitty person to me. And
I mean,
you know,
you may legitimately need to at this point.
you know, I think what Johnny doesn't want to realize is for so long, the show has been about him, and now it's not. And, you know, he's still the big dog, and he'll always be a staple, and you can never take away his legacy, right? But I think he's trying to hold on to something for whatever his reasons are, and that's cool and that's fine. But, you know, it's like I've always said, I'm like, look, Johnny, I have no interest in beating you in elimination because you're not good at eliminations. I've no interest in like coming after you and talking smack. I'm not trying to be
statistically
like,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like everybody else that comes in and tries to make a name off of themselves by coming after you. If I'm going to beat you, it's going to be where you're most deadly in a final, which is where your percentage is 6 out of 8. You know, you've won 6 out of 8 finals you've been in. So that's where I'll sit there and be like, all right, look, this is what it is, you know. But the thing is, he's been working with the same people, you know, whether he doesn't have the same people there to take dives for him. And I've offered that olive branch 2 seasons in a row, and 2 seasons in a row he has figured out a way in the off season to have a problem with me. And I'm sorry, but I don't deal with babies. You know, like you're 36, 37 years old and you're acting like a middle schooler. Like, you need to grow up. And you need to realize that there's people who would want to see you make it to a final, but if you're not willing to, you know, be a bigger man and apologize for the stupid shit you do and the fucked up things you do. Sorry, there's another F-bomb. And the messed up things you do.
There's been a couple other things.
Sorry. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and hold your hand to a final and sit there and let you convince me that I've done things wrong to you. I've never done anything wrong to him.
Well, here's unfortunately, we have some questions. There's so much more
It's not unfortunate that we have questions, but
no. It's
we could
unfortunate
talk
that we
for a
don't have
while.
enough time to, because there's so much more that I would like to ask you about.
Yeah, no,
I
me
know
too.
We would like to get into, but we have paying patrons that have some questions for you.
You guys can ask me questions. I'll
doing
try and knock them out in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, we're going to do a rapid fire real quick.
We're trying to be respectful of like getting you out of here on time because we know you got plans, and so you know maybe there'll be a part 2 down the road. I mean, again, like I'm very interested in like the way that you see everything and play the game and all that, and so
there's a lot
the
more
one
than
thing
gets
I was
shown. A lot more than gets shown.
Well,
and
yeah,
I'm thankful.
100%.
I'm thankful for that.
So one of the questions we got, which is what I had an issue with earlier, is one of our patrons, Paul, was saying, you know, you claim you have the most daily wins on a single season. Same with Wes, but why do you consider a top 3 finish a win? And under what math has hit your 6 daily wins are more than Jody's from the duel? Which, by the way, this is our fact checker guy. She had 7, and they were not top 3 finishes; they were actual wins. It's weird this season because I wish we would see who was like legitimately number 1. Like they don't give us that.
Yeah, well, I can honestly say that every single one I was a part of, other than this one that Turbo got right before me.
Yeah.
Oh, and the wind turbine one, because Turbo finished ahead of me on that one too. Those are the only 2 out of all of them that I wasn't first place when it came to.
Do you know why they don't tell us? Like, there's no metrics for us to go by. Like,
I have
you
no
did
idea.
it this fast,
and honestly, once again, I know the types of reactions I'm gonna get from people by putting something like that out there, and I do it. You know, I sit there and I say this all the time. Like I will go to car and I'll be like, just watch, and I just do it, and because it's like it's fun. It's fun to talk like that, and it's also, you know, it's fun to kind of see what everybody else has to say about it, and that's where I find the humor in it. Plus, you know, the more angry I can make other challengers and their fans, the more pressure they inadvertently put on themselves if they ever have to come into a season with me, because you know, pressure's like nothing.
I do appreciate that you're giving yourself benchmarks of like, hey, I said I'm going to do this. If I don't, then I'm on the record about it.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do, because I know that are people who will keep the tallies of this. So it's like, all right, right now I've got 3 elimination wins. I'm 3-3. Out of all the dailies that I've ever competed in, as of right now, I've got 9. And that's obviously a huge chunk of dailies where I was in the redemption house for. So there's nothing to go by there. But over time, I want to sit there and I want to look back and be like, wow, okay. So I said I was going to do this, and I got pretty darn close. And guess what? I can live with that.
Okay. So another one real quick is, did you try out for any other shows like The Real World or Are You the One or anything prior to Big Brother?
No, I got recruited for Are You the One, and I was dating someone at the time, and I was like, no way. And that was for season 1, so this goes way back.
Okay.
So this is Are You the One season 1. I never did any of those Real World things because I never really expected to go that route. Like I said, all my eggs were in
Competing.
in competing and making it to the next level of athletics, and getting on reality TV was never a thought in my head, which is funny because
it's weird looking back on that now.
Yeah, it's weird looking back on it now because everybody says, "Oh, Paulie does everything for attention and fame," and it's like, look, man, I'm not the one getting the opinions of everybody, whether it's love or hate. Like, I just went on Big Brother. I have no idea what's going on in the outside world. You know what I mean? You don't know what's going on in Big Brother. Yeah, now I do. But once again, when we're filming, I don't go into the season being like, all right, here's my storyline and this is what I got to do. And now there's a ton of cast members that do that, and they write their jokes for their interviews beforehand. And I'm like, I just get there and I see what's going to happen naturally.
I think I know who you're referencing on that one. So what about the way that you train gives you an advantage for the challenge? Does it just go back to like your soccer background and endurance, basically?
It's not just soccer. I mean, like, people don't know. Like, I've wrestled for as long as I was a soccer player, and I could have went to college for wrestling or soccer. I've got years of jiu-jitsu under my belt. I've got years of Muay Thai under my belt. I've got Krav Maga under my belt. And now, not saying that specific things give you an advantage, but for instance, if you're a wrestler and you have a wrestling background and a jiu-jitsu background, anything that can be taken to the ground, you're going to take somebody to the ground, and that's where it comes into play against bigger opponents, right? I'm not saying that I would stand a chance if you put a rope on me and CT and told us to run in opposite directions, because the physics there are not in my favor, and there's a lot that would have to go in to like me even having a chance of not looking like I'm getting pulled like a rag doll. But in a head-to-head thing where you're sprinting at someone, there's a lot of physics that go into it. And the endurance aspect from soccer, that really only comes into play on endurance-based things. Eliminations are
like the final.
Yeah, like the final. You know what I mean? So, like, when it comes to a final, I would say I'm very built to win every final that I go to. And that's not just from an endurance standpoint, but I'm good at puzzles. And when you look at finals, you got endurance, you got puzzles, and you got weird little carnival games. So it's like, okay, if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. I'd say the wrestling background and all of that comes into play with everything else, because that's training and conditioning for short spurts and when I train, I try to train where I have zero oxygen. So I'm always trying to increase my VO2 max, and I'm always incorporating memory and puzzles into my training. I don't know if you guys ever saw, I used to post these videos of like what I would do at the Rutgers Center for Exercise Science, where I would literally go through an entire workout, and then they had this reaction board where I'm sitting there tapping buttons, and it's sending me math problems that I have to figure out while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So that style of training is like, I take it very seriously, where it's like I make sure I'm not doing anything to damage my brain. because I've already had a ton of concussions in my life, so those are going to catch up to me at some point. So everything is in training to this, and it's fun. It gives me a purpose to train the way I train, because other than that, training gets boring. I'll be the first to admit it.
So let's try to get some rapid fire things in so we can get these before you have to get out of here.
All right. Well, so we're going to go at 8, so we're okay for a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, we got time.
So you said you were a fan of the challenge, and before you actually came on it, what's your background with the show? Like, did you start watching however many years ago? Like, what's your experience with it?
It was just something that my family and I always watched. So we always watched Big Brother, and we always watched the challenge. And it's the same way that we always watched soccer on Saturdays and football on Sundays. So I watched it for the competitive aspect of it, and that's what drew me to it. Big Brother was more for the entertainment value. The challenge was kind of like, man, if athletics doesn't work out for me, this is something that I totally built for, and I could do it. But then, I never expected to be on the challenge, and I think that I think that a lot of my castmates, they poke fun at me for it, and they say, oh, super fan. It's like, no, there's a difference. I was a fan, but now my knowledge from watching all these seasons gives me an advantage. The same way watching soccer my whole life gave me advantage when it came to playing the games at higher levels. So I have an advantage.
I think that's
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a legitimate point. No, I was about to say I think that's a legitimate point. I mean, I think a lot of people took issues with you saying you were a fan, and then I may be misquoting you on the reunion, but you're like, you said to one of your friends, "Oh, I'm gonna." With Cara later.
She's the one who put that question out there because she was like, oh, I find that sexy, like that's cool. That's something. I think
that came across to a lot of people like, oh wow.
I get it. I can't talk. I can't talk about sex. You guys can, yeah. I can't talk about sex.
It's not that. I don't think it's that.
It's 20. It's 20.
I don't think that it's that. I think people have an issue with. I don't know. It's almost like sometimes the couples that like overly want to express things are like. So I don't know if you have friends like this, but we have had friends that. In real life, the people who are like having the most issues or like are having like an intimacy problem or whatever are the ones that are like putting out there like, oh, look how great we are. Like we sex each other all the time. Like it's
right now.
And I think that's where it's coming across, and people are.
And I love that you brought this up. I love it because I look at social media and people's comments as projection from their own life, right? So now when you look at how people interpret how Cara and I are, right? It stems from something that they've experienced, right?
I think that's fair.
So you guys sit there and you say, well, most couples we know that project that they're happy all the time, they usually have intimacy issues and they usually have this and that. Whereas Cara and I, we're really just goofy, and like if I want to record playing a prank on her, I record playing a prank on her. And we're very comfortable with talking about things that might make certain people uncomfortable, right? And I love seeing how people jump to conclusions about things and they'll say, oh, this, oh, that, oh, this, because it always runs into something that happened in their life. So they are now attributing something that happened in their life to what's going on in our lives, where no two people are the same, and that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely fair. It just from like going back to what you're saying from personal experiences, it does seem like typically the people that are the most vocal about their things that we've experienced were the ones that down the road were like, oh, we're getting divorced or whatever 3 months later.
Well, and I'll say like it's kind of been. A sort of a running joke on here that at some point in every daily, Cara's complimenting something about you, like over the top, and I think like you look like if you sit back and think about it, like she legitimately adores you, right?
Yeah, like we legitimately just adore each other.
Yeah, and
I do think that's genuine, for the record.
And if we're being real, like, this is one of those things that, like, if you just step back and think about it for a second, like, everybody desires that, man. Like, everybody desires to, like, have their significant other look at them and not have any desire to be with anyone else on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, we just have fun, you know? And, like, the thing is, like, people may think that's over the top, but I can honestly say right here on this podcast, there's not one single time, and this is probably going to gross people out, but it's not too gross, but there's not one single time where she walks out of the shower in a towel or in a robe, or she comes out of the room like in her workout clothes, or when she gets done up to go out, and vice versa. Like when I come out of the shower, when I'm in workout clothes, and when I get done up for us to go out, where the first reaction when one of us sees each other is like, damn, like you look good. Like you better get out of here before I attack you. You know what I mean? Like, and that's a genuine thing, and that's a genuine reaction that we have. You know, like we sit there and like we'll randomly just tell each other how we care about each other and what we feel about each other, and that's just how we are. And it, like, people who are actually there the entire time will be the first to say it is very weird, it is very abnormal, but they are very crazy about each other, and like they literally talk about each other all the time, and they compliment each other all the time.
Wes said that when we interviewed him.
Yeah.
He was like, they're not like looking at anyone else. Like they're together.
Yeah, and like, you know, people were sitting there being like, how many times in a day can you guys actually, you know, be intimate with each other? You know, like how are you guys not tired on top of doing challenges, on top of all the stress of everything that's going on? And it's just because we're just two people that are very in sync in that regard. You know, like our drives match up, our goals match up. You know, the ideologies of like how we like our relationships match up. You know, like there's not a person that's in charge. Like we both kind of come to grips on equal terms. You know what I mean? Like it's very normal. And like it's crazy because, you know, you're only seeing clips of us on a TV screen or like through 15 seconds or like maybe an hour live. But, you know, as many people that think that it might be because there's problems, there's so many people that message us and are like, we want to see more. We want to see more of your lives. And Cara and I are sitting there being like, well, how much of our lives do we give to these people? Because sometimes if you give too much, it's dangerous.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you worried about like too much?
I am very careful when it comes to that stuff, and I kind of try to keep it at a distance when it comes to how much I let on about like what's going on, right? And like we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. My main thing is people watching us, right? Because this is what I learned from Big Brother, is that people will watch Big Brother on the live feeds and they will think that they know you, and they will think that like, you know, I would run into people after Big Brother and they'd be like, I feel like I've known you my whole life. Like we're like the same person. We could be best friends, you know? And it's like, well, I don't know anything about you. You don't know anything about me, really. You know, and that's my biggest fear, because we do live in a scary world where if someone becomes obsessed, it could become dangerous.
Like Stan, Eminem Stan.
Exactly.
Which we didn't know that's where the term came from.
Yeah.
For a long time. Like
it's
we
crazy.
were like, really? I mean, that song came out 20 years ago.
It's wild. It's crazy, and you know, and it's tough because how do you navigate? Like if Cara and I are out places and we're eating or we're just standing somewhere, how do you navigate? Like if people just come up to you, and you know, like we're just going about our lives, and you know, like normal people may just kind of approach you and be like, oh man, good to see you, good to meet you, wow, like you guys are really nice in person, or whatever they have to say, and then they move on. But then you do get some people where it's like they just kind of stand there and they just kind of stare, and like they'll just go off about all their knowledge that they know of you from like watching for however many years, and you're just like, this is awesome, but like, you know, we kind of want to go back to eating now, and you know,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the double-edged sword of being on reality TV. I mean, it's to some extent you have to expect it, and then at the same time, I can see why it would get tiring.
Well, shout out to you guys. You're doing much better than I am because it's kind of a deal on this show about how much of a disaster my dating life is. So shout out to you guys.
Hey, man, nobody's dating life is perfect. Everybody's had mistakes. And shout out to the people who have never had a bump in the road and have never never had an argument. You guys are awesome.
We've had arguments on this show.
Yeah, hey, sometimes what's that one song where it's like God bless the broken road that led me straight to you.
That's the one. Yes.
So it's like Cara and I's past are past, but like we are like, you know what? Would I really change anything if it meant that we found each other and we ended up together? I don't know. I probably wouldn't.
Have you ever sung that song to Cara? Speaking of,
Cara wants me to sing more songs on the guitar for her, but I've never sung that song. She's not a country fan.
Well, maybe tonight's the night.
Tonight might be the night.
Just give it a try. What have you got to lose?
Nothing.
Yeah, we did have someone say that you sing a lot on your Instagram videos, which I don't really remember seeing, but I guess you do.
I do sing a lot, I do. I don't care that I'm not a good singer, sometimes you just got to belt out what your heart's feeling.
Yeah.
Do you have anyone from the seasons you've been on, this is a Patreon question, that has surprised you as a good competitor, and then also ones that have been overrated?
I wouldn't say surprised me, but Brad lived up to his hype for the most part.
It was nice to see him come back
on Vendettas and watching him there. I'd say it was kind of hard on Final Reckoning. There wasn't really that dominant team. Like there was the good teams, but it's like when you look at it, Johnny and Tony won 2 challenges, Kyle and Brad won 2 challenges, Joss and Sylvia won 2 challenges, me and Natalie won 2 challenges, Zach and Amanda won 2 challenges, and everybody else kind of sprinkled one in. So there was not really a dominant performance. And as far as this season goes, I mean, Wes, like, come on. I mean, from a strategic standpoint and from a competitive standpoint, he's blown everything out of the water. I look back on this season and I say, by the time I realized Wes was doing things, it was already too late. And that's a credit to him.
Yeah, Wes, I mean, he's had a great return. I mean, we've been fans of Wes for years, going back to even his Real World season. And so the fact that he's back is something that we were like really hyped for this season. One thing that a guy from our Patreon named Paul asked is, there's never been a Paul on the challenge, and he's pretty sure you go by Paul, but for some reason on TV you go by Paulie. And I will say, part of your email and stuff like that is just Paul.
Yes. I mean, that's my given name.
Why do you go by Paulie then?
My father and grandfather's name is also Paul. So growing up, I was always called Paulie.
That's how I am. Like, my first name is William, and I'm like the 6th one, so I go by my middle name.
Yeah, so you get it. That's what I go. Plus, like, honestly, Paul seems like very business and like very, like what I would call myself when I'm old. Like, I don't consider myself old yet.
It's a biblical name.
And, and once I can say that I'm a little bit more right with God, maybe I'll go by Paul.
Okay. I'm trying to just read through these real quick.
Do you have any pregame rituals?
That's a good one. Yeah.
For doing a daily or an elimination?
Some people meditate. Some people, will listen to crazy stuff. You never.
So I visualize everything. We have no music there, so that's it.
True.
So I visualize, depending on if it's challenge day or elimination day, I have the same ritual depending on the day. And then before the challenge or elimination starts, if I'm the one going in, I always Conor McGregor walk my way to the challenge and to the elimination. And then after I win, if I win, I do the Aaron Rodgers belt into the Cristiano Ronaldo goal celebration. So those are things that are never shown. But I do walk up to every challenge and every elimination with the Conor McGregor walk. And then if I win, I do the belt into the Cristiano Ronaldo. And I have specific times when I eat, how I eat, what I eat, and how I exercise every single time there's a daily challenge and every single time there's an elimination, even to the point where the day before, so for instance, if we have to leave early in the morning for the daily challenges, I work out earlier in the day so that I could fall asleep early. And then on the elimination days, those are later, so I work out later, so I stay up later, so I sleep later, so that I wake up, so that I can wake up, eat, nap, and then go. But we are hitting the hard stop point. So what else?
Yeah, that's fine, man. We got most of the questions in, and again, a lot of people are just wanting. The only other thing was, if you did get in a fight with Kyle, like on the reunion, like again, we don't know what happened yet, but have they told you like, hey, don't do this because these are the repercussions? Like we have to say you can't come back.
Yeah, I've been told that if I touch somebody, I am banned. I have strongly suggested to a lot of my cast members that we do stuff privately and never talk about it and sign waivers. None of them have taken me up on my offer, and I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, that's a crazy offer. To be fair.
Well, like it gets to a point where you're like, where you're like, hey man, look, like you're crossing the line. It's getting disrespectful. So, there's fun banter and there's smack talk, and then there's crossing the line. You know what I mean? And I'm one that pushes the envelope of crossing the line, so I can appreciate it. But there's certain things where it's like, look, we can do this like gentlemen, or we can just keep it game related.
I mean, that's respectable. Before we get out of here, do you have anything that you want to plug or anything like that? I mean, I know you have a podcast. Anything beyond that?
No, man, it's all good. I would just tell people stay tuned. Cara and I, we have a lot of things in the works outside of the game. We ask that you guys take everything with a grain of salt with what you see on TV, and you would enjoy it much more if you just watched it for entertainment purposes, and you just remembered your English classes where you realize that every story has a protagonist, an antagonist, it has a rising action, it has a climax, and it has a falling action, and all that stuff. Like, go back to your English classes, and you'll really appreciate the challenge much more.
I will say again, it's an edited thing for our entertainment. Everyone we've talked to from the show, regardless of how people have felt about him prior, like even like this one, like I feel like we could talk for hours about everything. Like, you guys are normal people. We see you in a very specific light, and people can hate whoever they want. And I've clearly said I've had issues with some things you've done, but this has been fine. Like, it's been great. Like, I enjoyed talking with you. I'd like to talk with you again down the road.
I think we've got to have a part 2 down the road.
Hey, we'll have a part 2. Have I turned you guys into believers?
Paulie, I've been a believer.
I will say athletically, you're there. I get it. This is definitely it's pushing me. I'm not going to put you over going back to wrestling terms yet, but
all right. I'm not trying to be a babyface yet. We'll see if that ever happens.
My only thing is, I think what put me off originally was the fact that you remind me a little too much of someone that I very much do not like. The two of you speak similarly, have a similar cadence, even look similar to an extent. But
is this someone in your personal life, or is this a challenger?
Yes, personal life.
See, that's what I'm saying. You guys can't. Come on now.
But
that's not me. I didn't say that.
I know.
The thing is, after actually sitting and listening, I know I haven't been able to say very much because I've been in and out after my doctor's appointment. But no, I'm good. And I came in with an open mind. I didn't have anything super against you. I try to be Sweden in most circumstances, and I'm on a fine note with you.
Yeah, like again, I'm definitely like we'll go to bat for you. Like, you were very forthcoming on everything. You've been very cordial.
I cursed under 10 times.
Yeah, I mean it was close, but it was right around that, and it was all in like a 5-minute chunk. So, But yeah, again, we enjoyed it. We definitely are excited to see the rest of this season, and we're glad you were able to come on. So, other than that, we appreciate you being here.
Stay tuned for part 2, everyone.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Well,
I appreciate you guys for having me. Thank you, guys.
So that was the Paulie interview. I'm going to be very interested to see how people kind of perceive things. It's definitely probably the most controversial person we've had on the show. Maybe Shane is kind of ranking up there last season, but Paulie's definitely come in hot and made a name for himself, and he's done some things to make people mad, but I do feel like all the answers he gave us were thoughtful. He seems to think things through a little bit more than I expected, things like that.
But did we expect anything less than an honest, genuine guy?
Yes, when we started talking to him, yes, I did. But again, as we went on and got to know him a little bit more, you'll hear our take. I mean, you did hear our take on it actually, and we'll have him back some other time, and maybe we can get a little bit deeper into some other things.
And hey, shout out to Cara for making a little subtle cameo in the back at different
A few times, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, if you made it this far, SmashingHeadsPodcast.com has links to everything that we do. Patreon.com/SmashingHeadsPodcast. We do a special Patreon-only podcast called Redemption House, which is challenge adjacent is the best way to put it, but it also kind of just covers a wide variety of things, and we do questions and all that type of stuff. So, again, if you're new here, we'd love to have you come along for the ride, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Have a good night, everyone.